Alright guys, the last team that I'm going to talk about here is the Arizona Cardinals, and I had a couple other thoughts that I was going to mention, but frankly, being under the weather here, we're just going to end it at this. Is about all I can get out for now. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was their run-pass ratio, because it's something that's kind of been bothering me about this team. Offensively, we know that the Arizona Cardinals are not anywhere near what they've been in years past. They're not as explosive. They're not as efficient on the early downs. They just are not having a very good year from the quarterback standpoint. But one of the things that's perplexing is Bruce Arians. I'm a big fan of his, but his play calling has left me with a lot to be desired, because when you look at them, sure, against some of these good run defenses back here, maybe you're not going to run the ball quite as much, but take a look at what they did out of the bye. Now, Carson Palmer has been playing terrible, as we know. He's not been very effective. And they come out of the bye, they host the San Francisco 49ers. They go to the Minnesota Vikings, a team which does not have a good offense whatsoever. And then they finally play a team in the Atlanta Falcons who have an extremely explosive offense, an offense that you would want to try to keep on the sideline at all costs. This is an offense in Atlanta that you don't want anywhere near the field if possible. You want Matt Ryan on the bench. Even if you have a decent defense, you'd rather your offense stay out on the field. These are three prime defenses, as you can see. I'm looking at run defensive efficiency. Three prime defenses that you want to run the ball against, for certain. But what ends up happening? Well, let's look at the situational run-pass ratios, and I'm just looking at under the offense tab. You can go down to play frequency, situational run-pass ratios. I filtered for games within one score, so -8 to 8. And I'm going to ignore fourth quarter where a team might be, within this margin, but they're in desperation mode and they're down by 7 points and all they do is pass the ball late in the game and those types of things. That's not really conducive to us trying to figure out what the team's strategy is. So we get rid of the fourth quarter as well. And right now I'm looking at just these last three games. These are the last three games that they played against these bad run defenses. And the Arizona Cardinals, over the course of these three games, are passing the ball 62% of their offensive snaps in this scenario. 72 passes, only 44 runs. The NFL average, just so you know, you can scroll down to the bottom here, is 57% pass in this scenario over the last 3 weeks. It's usually right around like 57 to 58, 59% at the most. Over these 3 weeks, it happened to be 57%. And what we see is the Arizona Cardinals very high above that rating. One of the most pass-heavy teams in the NFL the last few weeks. Now, if you look at a lot of these teams up here at the top, you will generally find, at least those who have played 3 games with a larger sample size, these are teams that can't run the ball very well. Detroit can't run the ball. Green Bay can't run the ball. Seattle's had issues with their offensive line. They can't run the ball well. Minnesota doesn't have a competent running back. The Giants don't run the ball. And yet, here's Arizona. Now, the other thing to consider is, who does San Diego have? Phillip Rivers. Who does Atlanta have? Matt Ryan. Who does Oakland have? Derek Carr. All three of these quarterbacks are having phenomenal years. So, yes, they do have a run game. They could be running the ball a little bit more, but they have great quarterbacks who are playing well so far this year. Same could be said for the Pittsburgh Steelers down here at 62%. They have Ben Roethlisberger, who's been playing well. But why are the Arizona Cardinals passing the ball with Carson Palmer struggling the way he is against teams with bad run defenses as often as they are? Of course, they only beat San Francisco by 3 points at home, and they lose these other 2 games. They don't do a good job of keeping Atlanta off the field. So specifically, we can look at this Atlanta Falcons game just this past week alone. Let's isolate week 12 only. And we can see here Arizona up at 66% pass when the game was within one score in the first 3 quarters. So while Atlanta built up a huge lead, there are still a number of plays that Arizona was running when the game was well within one score. It wasn't fourth quarter desperation mode. They were down at most by 8 points, and yet they still decided to go pass twice as often as they go run. The other thing to consider about some of these teams is the running backs that they have. When you look at what I was looking at here, these 3 weeks, consider the caliber of the running back as well. We were talking about these teams don't have run games. Arizona has one of the most explosive, untapped potential running backs out there in David Johnson. I mean, he took the league by storm last season. He was a great complementary running back to the deep passing game. He could dominate time of possession when they needed him to. He was explosive. He was powerful. And yet they aren't giving him the ball nearly as much. Now, his rushing success has not been all that tremendous, but take a look here at these are I'm looking right now at the run pass situational success rates and ranks, and that's right here under efficiency success, and you can look at the situational success rates and ranks. And what I've selected here is I'm looking at the let's go to the last 3 weeks here. And what we could see from the Arizona Cardinals is a passing offense that's successful just 44% of their offensive passes. That's 23rd in the NFL in terms of how good they are. Obviously, Dallas is down here at number 1. People are saying Dallas is a ball control run heavy team. Well, actually, they're the most efficient passing team right now in the NFL. Most successful passing team. Highest rate of success from their passes. But let's talk about Arizona Cardinals. Stay on the topic here. 23rd, 44% of their passes are graded out as successful. 45% of their runs are graded out as successful. Now that's still only 18th, but it's actually better than what they're doing passing the football. And yet they still insist on passing the ball a lot. And the Arizona Cardinals, while their run game has not been quite as productive as it needs to be in terms of a yards per carry on a per play basis, I really believe that Bruce Arians needs to figure out a better strategy to utilize the run game and try to diversify the way that they're running the ball based upon down and distance, based upon game scenario, based upon the type of run and the scheme that he's using and the personnel that's out on the field, because they need to be more productive when they're running. That is a fact. But they can't go away from the run if that means going to Carson Palmer throwing the football. That is a negative EV move. The best player on your offense right now is your running back, David Johnson. Utilizing the run at a more balanced rate of play calls is going to allow you to be much more diverse offensively and productive overall. And last, let's look this is what Carson Palmer is doing passing the ball. And you know, his ratings this year are pretty terrible. There's no doubt about that. You can look at his overall passer rating and say, geez, this guy's playing terrible. But if you go here, this is just looking at the passing directional passer rating. You can see overall and then by down. And I'll scroll down here a little bit so you can see a little bit more. But notice how Carson Palmer, the deep ball this year has been terrible. There's no efficiency from the deep ball, so everything is short. But what I want you to pay close attention to, number one, is the deep ball on first and second down. Very poor. And that's one of their best weapons last year, was that early down explosive passing. But number two, let's look at the last few weeks only. So let's get rid of the whole season. And let's just look at these last 3 weeks that we're talking about here, where Carson Palmer certainly has struggled offensively. And actually, we may get our view reset here. Yeah, we went back to Cam Newton. So let's flip back to Arizona and Carson Palmer. And what we'll notice here when we look just at the last 3 weeks is the fact that he's actually been even worse. His production in the last 3 weeks is worse than what it was over the course of the season. I mean, look at these deep ball numbers. Absolutely pathetic. A 7 passer rating. On third down, he can't throw the ball down the field at all. This is just one attempt, no completion. 2 attempts, 1 completion, and 1 interception. First down, he's still struggling, but take a look at this. Right now we're looking at him throwing the ball to everybody, and that's obviously kind of an interesting view. But there's another thing that you could do here at sharpfootballstats.com, and that's you can isolate just the position. So for instance, let's just look at what he's doing to the running back, because David Johnson is a wicked ball receiver out of the backfield. And take a look at these strong numbers that he has out of the backfield, especially on third down. Tremendous numbers on third down. Overall, great numbers, over 100 passer rating anytime he's throwing the ball to David Johnson. But let's get rid of the running back and let's just focus on tight ends and wide receivers. And take a look at how much worse this is now that I've removed David Johnson and passes to the running backs than when he was in there. So here's when David Johnson is in there. Here's where David Johnson is not in there. Here's where David Johnson is in there. Look at third down. Here's where David Johnson is not in there. I mean, these numbers, when he's not just dumping the ball off to David Johnson or hitting David Johnson matched up against a linebacker, are absolutely horrendous. And so even more of a reason why they need to utilize David Johnson on the ground and try to get somewhat more of a balanced passing attack. There's absolutely no reason why a team whose quarterback is struggling when he's throwing the ball to his wide receivers and tight ends, like Carson Palmer is of late, against terrible run defenses, that they should be going 62+% pass and hardly running the ball at all. And that's important because this week they take on the Washington Redskins, who currently are not very good against the run. Prime opportunity for Arizona to try to run the football more often. But I have my serious doubts after what I've seen the last 3 weeks that Bruce Arians is going to make a decision to stick the ball in the belly of David Johnson and utilize him on the ground as much as he needs to be. In this game against the Washington Redskins, David Johnson needs to be carrying the football approximately 48% of their offensive snaps when the game is within 1 score and it's outside of the 4th quarter if they're not in desperation mode. I'm talking about 48% runs, which is right in this range down here. Carson Palmer should not be sitting back there trying to pick apart Josh Norman and a very above average pass rush of the Washington Redskins. If you look at their pass rush efficiency, which is right here for the Redskins defense, and we may get our view reset, so bear with me as we look at the pass rush defense that Arizona is going to face. You see the Washington Redskins down here, 7th best pass rush in the NFL. You do not want Carson Palmer sitting back there against one of the better pass rushes in the NFL. If Carson Palmer cannot pick apart the pass defense of the Atlanta Falcons with a mediocre pass rush and their #1 corner out in Trufant last week, and he can't pick apart the pass defense of the 29th pass rush of the San Francisco 49ers with the overall pass efficiency defense that San Francisco has of 24th, how is he going to pick apart a pass rush, a pass defense of the Washington Redskins, which ranks more efficient and also rushes the passer at a lot better rate? They need to be running David Johnson a ton this week, and hopefully they do. But I have my doubts, and it's one of the reasons why the Arizona Cardinals have a very disappointing record this year, is in large part due to Carson Palmer, and the secondary is because they're not therefore pivoting away from Carson to David Johnson enough. They had a great opportunity here after back-to-back wins, a tie against Seattle where the kicker missed a couple kicks. They go on the road, a tough spot after very little rest to play the Carolina Panthers. They lose that game. They have a bye. Reconfigure your strategy. We're going to run the ball. Carson's clearly playing terribly. Instead, they go pass heavy, and it's backfired on them, and that's why they're losing these games. With that said, guys, this is the last video that I'm going to do for this week. Hopefully, we'll be back with Periscope next Monday, to discuss the Monday night game that's going to be next week, where we're going to be seeing the Indianapolis Colts take on the New York Jets, and of course recap all the action that we saw this past week in Week 13. So tune in on Periscope Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, and I hope everybody has a safe and productive week.